So happy to be here today. My name is Mike Craig. I am from Nutrislice. I'm super pleased. We have Randy Lait from Menu Analytics with us today. Randy, hello, howdy. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
It's good to see you. The tan is it's coming in strong during the summer months.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a good base going.
Randy, I don't think I'm ever going to get a tan my entire life. I just don't think it's in the cards.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever not be tan. I I turn brown mowing the grass.
That is awesome, Randy. Well, it is a pleasure to have you here. Super thrilled. And, maybe to kick things off, maybe you could just tell us a funny story of how we met.
Oh gosh, um, the way we first met was that we were kind of reaching out to find people who were in the food service support aspect of the business, like with digital menu boards, with printed menus, those kinds of things, to say, hey, with this new FDA menu labeling rules coming out, uh, how are you helping your customers with menus when they need this data? If you need our help, that's our partnership. And so we reached out to Nutrislice, and just a little quick online research. We were like, "Wow, these guys are really impressive," and they're our kind of people. And so we reached out, and then it turned out that we had a mutual connection who did an introduction. And while we were out in the Denver area, we went out to lunch with you guys at a really good Indian restaurant.
That's right. Just super impressive upon first introductions, just meeting what you and Lisa, the NC State team, and now the menu analytics team, everything that you've done has just been so enviable, so successful. So, what a great introduction. Today I think we want to spend a few minutes and just kind of stroll down memory lane. I mean, you've had quite the career, lots of awards, done just some amazing things at NC State and menu analytics. Randy, how did this thing all start? How did the train get rolling?
I needed to work during college to help make ends meet, pay my way. And I got a job with the campus food service department. And it was kind of an easy job. I was not required to cook, and but I did have some technical knowledge. And I was helping at a really interesting time where personal computers were just being rolled out. The concept of a network and the concept of email was just breaking through. And so it I had some skills that I could help the food service department with at a time when they really kind of needed that. And that led to me getting my first job, which was kind of in food service operations at a food court kind of area. And I
Yeah.
learned some basic functions about, forecasting and ordering, and hot food's got to be hot, and you got to clean up before you go home, and all those things. Overall, we became good at money, and we became good at logistics of getting food in at the right time to do these things, and people where they needed to be. But honestly, we weren't as good as at food as we should have been, because I wasn't as good at food as I should have been. I grew up, my path was not one of working in kitchens and
Yeah.
being a culinarian. And so at a time when my career kind of changed from being about tech and business and accounting and finance, and I became the leader of a food service organization, well, you better get up to speed on food. And so I spent, at a really good time in my life, I had an opportunity to work with some amazing chefs that we had on our campus, and started to really transform the way we thought about food because of how they helped shape me and help open my eyes to what good food really looked like. And when you have people who are talented and excited about what they're doing, and they get you on board, and you start seeing it the best way to deploy those things and steer them so that you achieve the best outcomes, we hit a period of time of remarkable transformation. um, I remember being really proud once that we had a culinary trained chef on our staff, and being just like really proud that we had that. And when I left, I think we had 26 certified chefs on our campus. And
What's the secret to that? So it sounds like you just caught a wave of just an amazing culture where, everyone with their expertise was coming together, working together, for the betterment of the operation of the program, for the students. What's the secret to really good culture, Randy? How did you do that?
um, I think part of it comes from my own personality is not one of being overly confident in my abilities. So I was always curious and always trying to learn and always trying to absorb best practices from other people. And that leads to a thing with the sometimes you get that from outside where there's people you respect and listen to. And I had lots of support that way. But listening to the people on your own team and having respect for what they're doing and helping them be successful and keeping everybody moving towards a commonly understood goal. This is what we're going for, and this is how you can help. And I see that you're really good at this. What do you think we ought to do? And that people like that, and people raise their game. And when people feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves and they're really contributing, they found it really rewarding,
Motivating.
and I
Yeah.
did too. I found what they brought to the table amazing.
So there was an element of curiosity, or at least just not feeling like you've arrived, and that there's lots to learn. And as you bring together all the different perspectives and the experts across the food service operation, you were just eager. You had an insatiable desire to learn and to grow.
Yeah, I've always been nervous about the things that I feel like I should know and don't, and so chasing those things and trying to there's a thing to be rather than to seem.
Yeah.
And I've always been wanting to be on the right side of that equation and
Now, yeah.
be
Now,
genuine.
and that's not an easy thing to do. And I think if I can put you on the hot seat a little bit, I think your first introduction to your co-founder Lisa at Menu Analytics, when she came on board, maybe you weren't as thrilled and excited as to what a dietitian was going to be doing in terms of menu transparency, allergies, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, early on, my business partner Lisa and I, we both reported up to the same person, and we're both kind of competitive in a way, and trying to figure out, I'm doing the best work ever, and it's the most valuable. No, mine is. There's a little bit of that, but uh, later on, there were some things that were happening in food service that are interesting, particularly on a college and university campus, because if you're a restaurant, you can make a choice on how far you want to go down the path of catering to people with special diets or certain preferences. But in a college and university environment, they didn't come just to eat. They came because the university is a part of the path that they're on to try to develop who they want to be and to help them achieve their goals. And so student success is a huge thing on a college campus. And the food service department has a really strong obligation to take care of all of the students, and finding out what they need and steering the program towards that actually pays off. Even having things like special dietary needs early on was like, oh, how much extraordinary measures are appropriate to spend on a small segment of the population. But when we viewed it as a process change and analyzing how we did our business and how we needed to improve our operator experience in order to kind of improve the customer's experience, as we did that, we found that working on our back end systems to have one source of truth with data that was all connected made our jobs easier, but it also revealed opportunities financially that made it pay off overall. Getting better at your food production process, your purchasing process, and your information management process um, all paid off in spades for us. So it helped us be really successful at a time when we were really trying to be.
Oh, I won't cast you in that negative light too much. I think you different perspectives, and you were curious. You ask questions, and Lisa comes in. She's this radical dietitian who wants to show every number to every student, right? And you're starting to see on your side where expertise on the business operations, just the positive impact it's having with costing and forecasting. Just all of that is like, wait a minute, this is actually a really good thing. And it
Yeah,
probably highlights what you were saying about just different people on the team, their different levels of expertise, being curious, empowering, working towards something that's bigger than everyone there, turns out to just really start to create some momentum as it fuels what you call student success.
yeah. And I can remember in the early days when I was there and I was doing some catering support work. One of the things was about we have a vegetarian who has come to the event. How will we handle them? And it was with a really simplistic method. It's like, oh, we'll leave the meat off your plate, and you'll get more rice and vegetables. And to see how that evolved to having special items that were so beautiful that we would make way more than the number of anticipated vegetarians because the non-vegetarians were like, hey, can we have that plate? And the special diet food allergy part kind of followed the same process where early on it was like, oh, there are people who are allergic to peanuts. What are we going to do about that? Well, I watched the show called When Food Kills. It
Uh
was
huh.
a TV show because I didn't really connect. No one in my family has a food allergy that I'm aware of. Um, but as I watched that show, something that my mom had told me that once you've had a kid, you'll never see a story happen about someone else's kid where you don't think, wow, what if that was my kid? And when I watched that show about people with their kids going to K-12 and they had these food allergies and were going into anaphylaxis and those things, I was like, wow, what are we going to do about that as those students matriculate and come into our university? So I was kind of open and empathetic, to there's a solution that needs to work for them when they get here. And when we combine that with some of the other things that Lisa was doing with nutrition information and the special diets and religious preferences on meals, as we started to factor those things in, we had a core system that was being built to do that. And our food production process was kind of aligned with those things, which benefited all food production and helped us in cost control and waste reduction. And we ran like remarkably good food cost percentage. Yeah, so we did all right.
You did all right at this time. Were you the executive director at this time?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just take a half step back.
Okay.
What was it like when you were named the executive director of dining at NC State? That first moment, you get that offer, and you're like, well, the ship is now mine. I'm the captain here.
Yeah, I was excited about that because it was something I was looking forward to to the next phase of what we were going to do, and I was appreciative of the opportunity because I felt like it was an important job, and I think I felt like it was one that I would need to give my best effort to, and we spent a lot of time talking as a team about what best effort looks like and how to listen to one another and how to disagree at times and how to always try to advocate for doing the right thing the best way.
That's great. It sounds like you did have some vision for what you wanted to accomplish, and help us. Maybe you can articulate what your vision was as you became the director there.
Well, when I became the executive director, it was at an interesting time in that there had been a change in leadership for our division. We had been kind of reorganized from student affairs into finance and business. And so we weren't sure what ramifications that was going to have. But it meant that people looked at us more from a business standpoint than a student service kind of standpoint. Um, and that created some unknowns. But one of the things that I was really excited about, because I was apprehensive, honestly, to begin with, was that there was an opportunity for us to do some new things that were big things, and a change in imagination, to imagine ourselves to be bigger with new buildings, new food service concepts, new parts of campus that had been underserved, that we were going to develop new solutions for those things. And that that creativity that was needed at the time to rise to that occasion just came at a really good time for me. That there was, it wasn't just, well, figure out what you want to do. There was a synergy of people saying, let's see what we can accomplish, and that gave us some room to do some things that hadn't been done before, and gave us support, um, to do things like borrow some money to build some really expensive things. That was a little bit risky, but as it turned out, we were able to build those things. They did great, and we paid them off early.
There you go. So we've got a lot of listeners who are directors of food programs. If you could sit down, what piece of advice would you have to any director of any food service type as they kind of look to lead an organization and guide their operation into the future?
Oh wow. Um, don't I would say don't establish perfect as your goal, because I think the food service business is one where perfect is not a an achievable goal. But being great and going from good to great, that was one of the books that I had read, and followed that philosophy about getting organized and getting the right people on the bus, and in the right seats on the bus, and trying to raise your game. And if you people want people want to be really good at what they do, and they want to be proud of where they work. And we leverage that in some new ways, because I was really proud of what we were doing, and I was proud of where I worked, um, and proud of the people that I had the pleasure of working with.
Yeah, that's great. You come from a background in technology, switching into food service. You grow up, you've got the business side. You're doing some just amazing things. What role do you think technology plays in a food service operation?
Oh, I think technology has a role in almost every aspect of food service now, and will continue to do so. It will be even more, and particularly as the labor model has changed. You're going to see more robotic equipment. You're going to see data is going to be really important, and being able to connect sales data from a POS into a production system, so that you can forecast your needs accurately and have the right amount of food on the right day to do the things you need. And the analysis behind those things, and being able to collect and interpret data, and commute and to utilize the data in the best ways, is going to be a big part of food service.
That's great. And what advice would you have, on the operator side, if you had a group of technologists, all the software companies, if they were together and you had a piece of advice for them, what would you share?
Um, I think the one of the keys is not to invent a wheel that operates only on its own, to make sure that everything that you do works with the other pieces, and shares data, and is easier to manage from the simplest standpoint. One of the things that's interesting about food service and society in general, I think, is that everybody is having to adopt some form of tech into their lives. Even people who weren't that thrilled about it early on, you can't live today without some level of tech in your life. And if you adopt those things and embrace those things, and then figure out how you want to leverage those in food service, that's really important. But you're still going to be food service people. You still have to have people that love food and know what food is and how to appropriately and properly, you know, buy it, store it, prep it, cook it, display it, serve it, you know, and to have people who can do that with technology that they can actually use on their own. Because you can get tech people who don't understand the context of food, and you don't get the best result. And you can have food service people who know all about food, but they can't handle that, they can't apply the tech part of it, and you don't get the best result. But when you have a blend of people that know and love food and can use the technology enough to make their jobs easier and let them focus on the things that really show up on the plate, that's a win.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful, Randy. So, jumping back into the success of NC State, you're leading the charge. You're starting to get a lot of recognition in many different ways, but one of the ways that you were singled out is just the effect of your transparency and how you were able to do some great things for students. What was the secret there?
Oh gosh, I think our director of nutrition and wellness was really the secret there, Lisa Eberhardt, and she's my current business partner. Uh, it came at a time when we were looking to see what the right thing to do was, and she was ready, I think personally, to elevate that part of our program. She was looking to do that, and I was kind of looking for the, like, all right, if we're going to build a top-notch program, we have to have facilities, we have to have culinary talent, we have to have a different approach to food that we've done, and we need to leverage data and systems in a way that really makes sense. And one of the first ways, it was an accident that kind of led us on the path, was when I became the director, and we put this thing on the website that customers could complain about things, okay, and they would route to the right people. But I got a copy of all of those, and I looked for patterns. Wow, people say this a lot. One of the things that came up a lot was, I went to the dining hall because your online menu, which got like 30,000 hits a week, your online menu said you were serving, I don't know, fried chicken, and I got to the dining hall and it wasn't there. What happened? I walked all the way over there. It was at least 100 yards.
That's a
I
bait
had
and
to walk.
switch.
Yeah, and I was like, what's wrong with this? Why does this happen all the time? And I asked our director of nutrition and wellness, because she was in on menu planning and stuff, can you find out where we're going wrong? And she started unraveling, pulling on the thread of how that worked. And we found that our menus were being planned in Excel spreadsheets, which became multiple copies that were differentiated. And one copy went to the website guy, and it was a different version than what ended up in the units. And as we started looking at that whole process of how we analyzed our nutrition data in a separate software system, how did we manage our inventory? Oh, that's in a separate software system. And as we bundled these things together and streamlined it into one source of truth, things just got better. Our recipes became better because the nutrition data was a really good marker of recipe accuracy. And as the recipes got to be corrected nutritionally, all of a sudden the ingredients that they use become, the quantities become correct. Your purchasing becomes tighter. Your cost becomes a more accurate number. And so you can set your pricing appropriately. And all of a sudden things got better up and down the line, because we started pulling on that thread one day about why the website menu doesn't match what we're actually doing.
That's fantastic. So from there, you improved essentially the operator experience. It sounds like you made it maybe a little easier for operators to do their jobs, and that had a compounding impact on the students. And
Oh, absolutely. And in terms of a customer experience, for the students who were interested in knowing what was in their food, and some of which have allergies, and some of which are just they have an interest, just like when you're on Amazon and you're ordering a product and you want to know all about it to pick this versus that. People do that with food as well, even if they don't have an allergy.
yeah,
But we were able to connect because of the operator experience things that we had improved upon. We could connect the digital menu boards, the website, the nutrition kiosk, the product labels, and the mobile app that the university had built. We had connected all those to our system so that if we made a change in a recipe today, tomorrow morning, it would show up in all the units and all the customer facing communication points where everyone could see, oh, this is what it has in it. This is how many calories. Oh, that's low in fat. Great.
as you start to make as you made these changes and you're still collecting the student feedback, how did the feedback evolve? What kind of patterns were emerging as you made operations a little easier to navigate?
Probably the most noticeable thing that happened were that people who had really been struggling to eat, and again, you're dealing with young people who are out living on their own for the first time, and a lot of times in the K-12 years, parents of of a of their child that has a food allergy really watches for them and helps manage for them. But when you go to college, you're on your own, and you have to learn to advocate for yourself and to know what's in your food and to not take unnecessary chances. So one of the things we found was a real sense of relief amongst students who were struggling with how to eat, how a basic, function, and then to be able to feel more confident in how to eat in our dining locations, self-navigating because we had all of the data there. And it wasn't just for the major eight. If you were allergic to mango, it would show up in the complete ingredient list, and you say, "Oh, this I can eat this," or "No, I can't because it has mango in it." And so there were things like that which showed up in student success. And one of the things that we did was this Blue Zone meal, and invited students who had food allergies to come. And the sense of inclusion was really important to them, and it was something that you can't measure that well. You have to see it and hear the stories. And people made some videos and had sent in talking about what it meant to go to that and to be able to be with other people and to eat safely and to feel like their needs were taken care of. And then it started showing up with parents as well with, I'm down to between this school, and this school, but you have a program that we feel like I would send our student to your school because you're going to take care of them. And we won over a number of parents because we had a solution for their student.
How cool is that? All right, so you're getting momentum. You've created momentum operators. It's easier to just maintain, manage anything. There's no double entry of anything. Technology is kind of serving its purpose there. It's having an impact on the students. They're getting a much better experience, predictability. The business operator wants to know: are the numbers improving? Are you selling more food? And what did the financial aspect of this transformation look like?
Oh, wow. Well, we were going through a period of real growth. So I think we went from like 29 million bucks in annual sales. When I left, we were at 49 million bucks in annual sales. And one of the things that happened that was, and it wasn't all about food transparency. We did a GPO and changed some of our purchasing, but we had 3 consecutive years of $1 million in revenue growth and $100,000 less in food spend. And that's really stretching your margin. And
Yeah.
these things that we were doing showed up in significant ways. That at the beginning of the story, that wasn't necessarily the goal, but as we made our processes better and things work better for our customers, we found that there was benefit, financial benefit for us as well.
I mean, and then just momentum happens. I mean, you're kind of hitting the trifecta of operator experience and customer experience leads to the impact on the bottom line, and it probably transformed the way you thought about what was feasible and possible inside your program.
Oh, very much so. Success breeds success, I think. And we got in this upward spiral over the, I guess, 12 years or so that I was the senior director. We were in this upward spiral of revenue growth, which gave us the money to be able to fund improvements, which gave us revenue growth.
That's the way to be. That's the way to go, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I was so fortunate to be a part of a team that was headed in a good direction, and together we really did some cool stuff.
That's fantastic. So if I'm summarizing, step one of what you kind of did, really, when this transformation, really, this upward spiral is what you call it. Phase one was operator experience and simplifying and unraveling. The feedback came from the students, but the focus was how do we make and take care of our operators so that they can be more and do more and not get stuck in the mire, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we formed Menu Analytics was
Yeah.
that I knew that there was going to come a time when I would be retired from NC State, and that I wasn't going to sit home and watch TV. And other operators, through professional organizations that I've been a part of, so many people had helped me, with advice and just modeling after people that you feel like are, doing the right things. And we wanted to. It's a little bit of a, pay it back,
Yeah.
to provide an opportunity if people need some help with looking at their menu transparency program or their food service operations on a college campus, that we're able to help if they need that help. And with the FDA menu labeling rules, being knowledgeable about that and trying to help restaurants achieve those goals as well. So
Yeah.
that's why we got started.
So essentially, menu analytics is all about the building blocks of just really, really great operator experience, operations, and that's going to funnel growth through better customer student experiences, and that upward momentum just keeps moving forward so that you can funnel more and more innovation and newness and greatness inside the food experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Each school has its own unique culture and its own unique set of aspirations. And it's always kind of fun to talk to schools and find out, where they're headed, and to challenge some of those assumptions sometimes, and to sometimes have them express opportunities that even I hadn't thought of. But working together on a plan that's going to help them get where they feel like their school needs to go is, I find that rewarding.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Oh, so the let's talk a little bit about menu analytics then. So you started this organization, just fantastic. You timed it right. You started right before COVID. You've helped a bunch of organizations kind of get through the COVID experience. Where do you see kind of the value proposition of menu analytics now and into the future?
Oh, well, I think that the food service industry. I'm going to divide things into two parts.
Okay.
For the restaurant side of things, commercial restaurants, I feel like the bow was really pulled back and it's being let go, and that there was a thinning of the herd that happened with a lot of restaurants, but that's going to create a lot of opportunity as well. And as brands are positioning themselves to try to work out a really good concept with good food that's able to be executed consistently by operators, um, that will the way we can help them is with nutrition analysis of those menus and help them develop some healthier options, so that they can serve, so that it's widely acceptable uh, to the most number of people. So I feel
That's
like there's opportunities to help with that. for the college and university segment, I feel like there's kind of a big reset going on, that things were building to a point and then COVID happened and everything got interrupted, and they're just starting to get their feet back under them about, okay, here's what the new normal is. And I think the challenges of the food service industry in terms of particularly with staffing and the great resignation of people like myself who retired from their jobs leads to a little bit of a vacuum right now, and that you should always have someone that you can turn to for advice and some direction as a younger group is starting to figure out, well, where do we go from here? What should I be doing? Because honestly, day one when I took over, I did not have a long-term vision of everything, but I knew that we needed to get one, and we started formulating what the vision ought to be, and we did that together so that it was a shared vision, and it paid off. And you know, so we can help others do that as well.
That's fantastic, Randy. Well, what a success. What a career, and still going. Just some amazing things that you've done, expertise that you bring to the table. Before we end, I have some curveball questions for you.
Okay.
All right, as a food service operator, can you tell us an experience of a food experience that you provided as the operator that stands out and is memorable to you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so many. Um, One of the things that was really cool was the chancellor at NC State University had just been hired, and it was one of his like meet the campus kind of moments. And we worked with student government to develop an ice cream event that the chancellor got to name and help be a part of creating a special ice cream that was known as the Chancellor's Choice ice cream. And so there was some work going on with our food science department to make this ice cream, and NC State makes fantastic ice cream. So they developed this flavor, and we put together an event with the students where we made this huge ice cream sundae that was like, I don't know, 8 feet tall. It made it in a big like kids swimming pool kind of thing, and it was like had all these toppings and syrup and everything on it, and it was a fantastic event because it set the right tone. You know, everybody likes ice cream. It was fantastic ice cream. The chancellor, you know, it gave him a chance to interact with students in a really positive way. So that was one that stood out, and
Well,
it gave me a chance also to work with a young woman from student government who, in her own right, became a independent business owner doing social media and marketing for restaurants. And you know, she ended up going to New York and doing all these cool things, and that was a part of that experience. We did a number of great things with an agroecology education farm where students learned to grow food, and our chefs were involved, and we would, you know, take the food from the agroecology farm that the students were growing and used it in our dining operations, and some went to the food bank. You know, so all kinds of good
just
things.
lots of good
Yeah,
experiences.
we
And
did a
isn't
farm to fork dinner out there uh, a few years in a row. That was just amazing. Did it on the farm. Yeah.
well, Randy, this is fantastic. Can't thank you enough for joining us today, for passing the tots, talking a little bit about your career, your success, and your experience. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and we hope to talk soon.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.